Okay, we're going to start off by performing our air brake inspection. But before we do that, we want to make sure that our seatbelt is applied. Every time you hop in the cab, put your seatbelts on, whether you're at the yard, at the DMV, or in your personal life. Safety first. Okay, so the air brake test is a pass or fail part of the DMV test. It's not point driven, which means anything you say that's wrong could be misconstrued and could be potentially fail you. So first we want to go ahead and start off by identifying our primary and secondary air gauges. Okay, our primary gauge is right here, our secondary gauge is right here. The increments on them start at 0, 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60. After 60 they go in 10-pound increments, 70, 80, 90, 100, so on and so forth. Okay, we're going to do what's called a safe start. We're going to make sure our gear is in neutral, our brakes are applied, and we're going to warm up the ignition. Now when we start up the truck, it's very important to be listening to the engine for any irregularities, anything that sounds out of the normal. We want to make sure that if there's any problem with the vehicle, we can identify it right away and we don't go out on the road with this. So we're going to go ahead and turn the truck on with the clutch down. And now we're starting. Now our first test is called the air governor cutout test. The air governor must cut out before exceeding 140 psi's. So our pressure is building, as I can see on my primary and secondary air gauges, and all we have to do is wait for our needles to settle. If you'd like to speed up the process, you can apply the accelerator, but never exceed 1100 RPMs on your tachometer. Now at this time, I'd like to bring up the fact that while you don't have to be holding the steering wheel, it's always a good idea to have your hands in the proximity of it. You don't have to be 10 and 2, but always be ready to control the vehicle if necessary. Don't have your hands down by your side. Don't have them on the shifter. Don't have them on your legs. Okay. My needles have settled, and I'm identifying that I'm at 119 primary, 117 secondary. This is a good test because the air governor cut out before exceeding 140 psi. The next test we're going to perform is the air governor cut-in test. The air governor cut-in test dictates that the air governor must cut in before dropping below 100 psi. And what that means is that the air governor has to not only stop the release of pressure, but replace any pressure lost. So we're going to do a nice, easy application of the brakes. We don't need to stab them. We don't need to go hard. We're just going to try and lower the pressure 5 to 7 psi. 112 primary, 118 secondary. At this point, I'm going to give it a couple seconds to see if it begins to rise. And my needles have not begun to rise, so I'm going to go ahead and apply the brakes again. All right, I'm at 108 primary, 110 secondary. Once again, I'm waiting to see if my needles begin to rise. And they're not rising, so I'm going to apply the brakes again. 101 primary, 106 secondary. And you can very evidently see that my needles have begun to rise, so that means this is a successful cut-in test. The next test I'm going to do is the air governor applied brake leak test. Alright, and what this dictates is that I cannot lose more than 4 psi in 60 seconds for a combination vehicle. But before we do this, I'm going to need to do what's called a safe shutdown. I'm going to make sure my gear is in low, so I'm going to go into reverse. Now in this truck, every truck is different, but in this truck I need to go first, then reverse, to prevent rubbing the bearings in the clutch. Now I'm going to release the tractor brake, and I'm going to release these brakes one at a time. You don't need to hit both of them at the same time. You want to maintain control of your vehicle at all times. So I release my tractor brake, and now I'm going to release the trailer brake. And the whole time my foot is on the clutch right here. Okay, this is how I'm maintaining control of the vehicle. Now at this point my tractor and trailer brakes are released. I don't have my foot on the service brake. I'm maintaining control with the clutch, and I want to build up to full capacity before shutting down. So once again, foot's on the clutch, and I'm going to go ahead and use the accelerator, never exceeding 1100 RPMs, and build up to full capacity. I'm going to assist my air governor, or my air compressor, in generating the air. Good. My needles have settled. I'm going to go ahead and shut the vehicle down. Take my foot easily off the clutch. Very smooth. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the applied brake leak test, also known as a 460. So in this test, I cannot lose more than 4 psi in 60 seconds for a combination vehicle. That'll be 3 psi for the tractor, 1 psi for the trailer. In the event that you're only testing your tractor, you are only required to lose, you don't have to lose more than 3 PSI. But since we have a combination vehicle right now, we're doing 4 PSI. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply the brakes one time and hold. Wait for my needles to settle. And I'm at 103 primary, 102 secondary. My minute begins now. Now you want to make sure that you have a phone out that can measure the time, or a clock, or a stopwatch, or your personal watch. If you're going to use your phone, very important that you let the examiner know that you're going to use your phone before starting the test. If you don't have any apparatus to measure the time, ask the DMV examiner and they will assist you in it. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward our minute. So our minute's up. I'm at 103 primary, 102 secondary. This is a good test because I did not lose 4 more PSI in 60 seconds for my combination vehicle. At this point, ask the examiner if they'd like to check the gauges. They've checked the gauges, okay, and now ask them if you're good to release your foot off the brake, and that's just so that they can make sure that you make sure that they document it before you release pressure with the brake. So they've documented it, you're good to release the brake. Let's go ahead and take the foot off the brake. And next, the next test, that was a successful test. The next test we're going to perform is the low air warning device. All right, it's an electronic component, so we need the ignition in the on position. And it's a light or a buzzer. In this truck, it's going to be a light appearing right here. It should appear between 55 and 75 PSI. So we're going to do a nice steady application of the brakes. We're not rushing it. We're not stabbing them. Just nice and steady. Okay, and you can see our light right here. Okay, now we're going to give our readings. I'm at 71 primary, 69 secondary. This is a good test because the low air warning device came on between 55 and 75 PSI. Now my light just went off right there. So what I can do is I can let the examiner know that I lost my light. Let me go ahead and apply it again. And now I'm at 69 primary, 70 secondary. This is a good test because the low air warning device came on between 55 and 75 PSI. Go ahead and shut down the electrical now. And we're going to test our tractor and trailer brakes. Okay, this is called the pop-out test. And these should activate between 20 and 45 PSI. So we're waiting to hear that pop. We're going to go ahead and, just like on the low air warning device, we're going to apply the brakes nice and steady. Okay, our pop out was achieved. Both brakes are popped out. I can see the black valve beneath it. And we're at 36 primary, and just under 36, we're going to call it 34 secondary. This is a good test because the tractor and trailer brake popped out between 20 and 45 PSI. All right, this concludes this portion of our air brake test. We're going to move on to our tug test, and before that, we're going to do the in-cab inspection.